Welcome to the Trailblazers Experience Podcast, the podcast that's all about candid conversations with women, sharing their career journeys, highs and lows, lessons learned, and sprinkled with some Trailblazer takeaway tips to guide you at the end. My next guest is Georgia Scott, Head of Marketing at Adobe for UK, Middle East and Africa, and previously was General Manager for Saatchi & Saatchi in Australia. She has 15 years experience. I could spend all day reading her CV, but I'm happy to have you. Welcome, Georgia.
Thank you so much for having me. Having listened to the other women that have graced your podcast, I'm really, really honored to be here.
That's the whole idea. It's all about, giving the young women out there or people who are navigating their career or trying to understand what next, what do I do? Who are these super women? And then you just find out we're going through the same struggles, challenges, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Bit like the swan that you see, and then they're paddling their feet.
Yeah,
Navigating.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So,
I feel like that swan.
Exactly. Yeah. That's me every day, all day. Talk to me about your career and sort of how, if I think about digital e-commerce marketing, it's not been around for a very long time. And it's been cited as the, fifth industrial revolution. The sixth one is probably AI, as we speak, as we live it. But what, made you decide to say, I think this is something I could start a career in? Take me all the way back.
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, I've had a rather eclectic career. I think I feel like I've touched every facet of marketing in some way. I kind of started in PR, social media, digital, creative. So I feel like I've kind of almost kind of come full circle. And the digital part, actually, in all honesty, was by accident. And it was actually due to a friend of mine. I feel like it was kind of when social media for businesses had just kind of started taking off. And a friend of mine worked at a media agency called TeP&x. And I loved copywriting. And that was one of the things that I'd always been really good at in PR agencies. And one of the things that I had started doing in the PR kind of world was taking these quite traditional brands usually, and they were retail, so beauty, handbags, etc., watches, and not just writing the copy to go to the journalists or writing the kind of press releases to go out, but also being like, oh, we should start writing their social media posts. We should start creating kind of what their brand might look like online. And I was, very junior at this point, and I just really enjoyed it. And I think because I enjoyed it and I was just interested in it, and because I had a passion for copywriting, I ended up just kind of becoming the go-to person. I didn't really understand it, if I'm honest, from like a media tool. I just knew that it was engaging and it was another channel to put out copy. And she said, oh, there's this great job in my agency. She was like, you should come and take it. It's to lead the social media. And I was like, I don't feel like I know enough about social media. And she said, well, no one else does. So you may as well. So I was like, okay, well, I'll figure it out. And that was really how it started.
That is so interesting about the copywriting piece and translating it to so actually there were no guidelines. There were no rules in a way. There was no one checking. So it was like, well, yeah, exactly. It's like, right, I have 200 words. I'm just going to put it out there and see what happens. And probably people were not as sensitive. There was no cancel culture there. So it was like, oh, put it out there, see what happens. And it's okay.
It was so interesting. And mainly that agency looked after financial services industries. And so it actually became, and I really grew in my role there, and I ended up running kind of the whole digital team there. But the thing that was so interesting was guiding these very nervous, sensitive, highly scrutinized businesses through what might a social media presence look like for them. And I think that's when I became, I'd say, a bit more strategic, was trying to figure out and understand, to your point, what are the guidelines? Like, what can they and can't they do?
That's so interesting. I mean, yeah, very sexy industry to be a head of social.
No, it was so dry. It was so dry. But that's a good challenge. It's a good way to start out.
Yeah, and I like the message around, you just took a chance in
Yeah.
terms of you didn't know anything about it and someone said, "Hey, do you want to take this on?" That is sometimes how life is, where you're given
Yeah.
an opportunity and is what soft skills do you have to actually take this to the next level?
Absolutely. Like I'm such a believer in soft skills, kind of not necessarily over hard skills, but really that is the number one thing that I now hire for. Like I think most people can learn most things if they're the right type of person. Like if you are smart, if you're a quick learner, if you're driven, enthusiastic, like just seeing an opportunity and running at it and figuring it out is I tend to find that the team members that I have that perform really well are just those types of people, and you could really give them anything.
Yeah. And you've had a really good, career just looking at, the LinkedIn. So you started off with that. And then how did the journey progress from there to,
Yeah.
being GM at Saatchi and Saatchi? So it's like,
Yeah.
come on, girl.
I know I have to say that was an amazing job, and cut a bit short for family reasons, and I had to move back here. But I think if I had to sum it up, it is probably that attitude that I've always had, which is that I do run at opportunities. Like I think if you know where you want to be and you know that you've got what it takes from a work ethic perspective to get there, you've just really got to kind of take the jump. And then also really networking. Like I always say yes to an opportunity to meet someone. Like at the end of the day, I think having the skills and having the personality is one thing, but knowing when an opportunity arises is all down to who you're connected with, what conversations are happening in what areas. So for me, I always put a great deal of emphasis on network, but not just from my own perspective, for the business that I was running. So whether that was a small social media team, whether that was a marketing department, what you can tenfold your impact with the right partners in your marketing. So whether that's through more kind of structured partner marketing, whether that's through media relationships, those are the ways that you can tenfold your budget. And to begin with, I had small budgets, right? Like I wasn't being given giant budgets to do these huge campaigns with. And I think that's really where my career took off, because then I would start having really interesting conversations with someone that had sponsored something that I'd done. And I'd find out about this amazing role or new company that they might have bought. And I would kind of get really interested in that. So I think that kind of always looking at the ecosystem, always looking at the partners that you should be working with. They don't just serve the business that you're in, but they serve you. So
There's a bit of curiosity there as well, isn't it?
yes.
In terms of, not just looking at the ecosystem, but a general interest for businesses and what's happening around you.
Yeah, I'm absolutely I'm a bit obsessive about it. Like I think if I was to sum up my personality, I just love solving problems. And that comes in different shapes and sizes, and I think that's why I've had different shaped jobs. But solving problems, whether that's the organization and the marketing team and how to better structure them to get a better output, whether that's a brand that I was looking after when I was agency side, whether that's a big creative brief and we don't know how to tackle it, like solving problems to have business effect is the thing that I think I love the most. So yeah, so I toyed around a little bit in the UK in e-commerce for a few years. I ended up running a small marketing team for a SaaS company, and then I quite quickly realized that kind of what I was saying earlier, that nobody was really focused at that time on partner marketing and also kind of how you could quite quickly build out a decent marketing plan with 3 or 4 partners. So I decided to go freelance because actually that really served me best. I'd already built this great network. I had all of these companies that maybe didn't have a huge amount of money to throw at a resource, but they desperately needed a marketing plan. They needed to go to market. They needed a partner network built for them. They needed relationships with publishers. And so going freelance for me was an awesome opportunity, because I was able to kind of basically go into these businesses, build them a plan, set them on their way, and then go on and do the next one. And then my kind of career took a bit of a turn because I met my now husband and moved to Australia. So which was a bit
If
of
you
a,
want to talk to me about freelance, because, usually there are, I always say, meet 3 or 4 types of people. So the one that just said, look, I never want to work for anyone ever. I want to be my own boss, have the entrepreneurial spirit, and built amazing businesses. We've met so many people who've just done that, and
yeah,
I'm in awe. And then there's some that go the classic: I've gone to uni, I've worked now for someone, and I'm going to start my own business, and then that trajectory. But you worked and then said, well, I'm going to go freelance for a while, did that, dipped into that, obviously moved to Australia because love took you there in a
yeah,
way. But
yeah,
to be fair, Georgia, that sort of led to, the GM
yeah,
role at Saatchi and Saatchi.
yeah,
What inspired you to say, right, I've been freelance, I've worked for myself, but now I'm ready to take on this leadership role, managing this
yeah,
organization, people, big
yeah.
budgets. Was it then a quick decision, or was there pause in between that?
No, so there was actually a role that I took. So when I first moved to Australia, I, in all honesty, needed a visa. So I had to get a permanent role. I couldn't be freelance. I think at that moment in time, my plan had to be freelance for a while because I was really enjoying it and I felt like I was
Yeah.
learning a lot. Um, and I got a role as a strategist, as a digital strategist for an agency, quite a small agency, but they had really interesting clients, and I've always liked kind of writing plans and strategies for brands and businesses. So got that role. And then I kind of just naturally started noticing all these things that were wrong with the way that the business was run. I was like, this doesn't seem very profitable. And this is a really slow way of doing things. And actually, we could increase our content production by 5 times here if we did this. And literally over kind of like 8-9 months of being there, they made me GM because I think just I feel maybe in a bossy way, but I just was naturally doing it anyway. And that's when I realized that actually kind of team leadership and management, and also the operational side of marketing creative businesses is something that I'm really, really passionate about. And it was really building that business. And I built that business kind of over 2.5 years, there, 2.5 to 3 years, that I realized, I guess, a new confidence in myself. Like that, I naturally fell into that role. So I think I would never have applied for a general manager role of a digital agency. That wouldn't have happened. But because I fell into it and naturally did it, and was successful at it, it gave me kind of this new confidence of, oh, actually kind of maybe I can do this. And then I was looking at my experience and where I had gaps. And I think that's another thing that I think people should always do is lean into where you don't know things. Like, I think that's scary for people and people like to stay in their comfort zone. But for me, I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about this. This is a gap for me. I've never done big brand creative work. And I want to. How can I do that? And that's when I kind of managed to step into a role at Clemenger, BBDO. I looked after a number of their accounts, and then I ran their account service department, which was about 40 people, about kind of 18 large clients, brands like BMW, L'Oreal, Mars, etc. And and from there, I kind of realized, well, this is what I want to do. I want to manage and motivate teams to achieve great marketing business outcomes. And that's when Saatchi's happened, was after that.
I think there's something to be said about how you went into a role for a smaller agency, and you probably grew up from a revenue, profitability, efficiency, structuring. And I think that's something maybe we shouldn't be afraid of, to say, even if you have your eyes set on a larger organization that you'd love to work for, build your C-suite skill set, as you said, problem solving strategy with a smaller business where you can have, a much bigger impact swiftly, maybe lower risk in terms of making mistakes, so you can fail fast, fail forward. And that intuition of yours of just wanting to, you love leadership and you probably are natural in it, but you also want to make the business better, which I think is a very good trait to have. So something I think you've just leaned into as well.
Yeah. And I think, you're so right about small agencies. And I think as an industry, I think something that I'm really passionate about changing is I think we're really snooty about where people come from. I think if we're client side, we look for people to come from very similar businesses and brand names that we recognize. If we're agency, we kind of have a top 10 agency list in our head, and we look for people that have got that brand and that agency name. When actually, if you're in a smaller business or a smaller agency for a period of time, and you do have to develop a really broad skill set, because you have to do a lot and you have to figure things out. You've got to be about 4 or 5 roles simultaneously. You've got to make great work on less budget a lot of the time. You've got to be really quick and competitive. And I think if you take the opportunity to develop your skill set there, to your point, it is so beneficial when you take that into a larger business. And I really wish that HR and recruitment and talent departments looked more at that and less necessarily sometimes at the name.
I totally agree. I mean, I was looking at, when you go on Google and say, so what are the top C-suite skills or GM skills? And it's emotional intelligence, strategy, problem solving, management, change management. Because guess what, girl? How often is a business changing? Critical thinking, decision making, conflict resolution. You're wearing many hats.
Yeah.
And it's not the brand that you're coming from that will teach you. It's, going through it and learning through the different organizations as well.
Definitely. So, that's definitely a big learning. Not to be, obviously, look, you definitely learn different things at large organizations. Adobe is so much bigger than any business I've worked for before, 30,000 employees. So there's definitely a different skill set that you have to learn to manage businesses that large. But I don't think necessarily either is better.
Let's talk about your milestones. So what are some key milestones that you are proud of? So things that you said, you know what, I did that. I'm really proud of that in my career so far.
I would say that, the GM role at Saatchi's was a really pinnacle moment for me. I'd actually wanted to get into creative advertising for a really long time. And one of the reasons that actually I mentioned this kind of frustration with recruiting at known brands is that I'd been rejected from applying for jobs a lot.
Can you talk about that? How many jobs do you know? Did I tell you this?
No.
I keep a folder where I...
Oh, that's a good idea.
I keep an email folder, and I don't want to actually say what I actually named it, but I literally, all the rejections I've gotten over the years, I put them in there.
Yeah.
And
is it like a vendetta folder?
No, it's actually just to remind me. No, that you just have to keep trying. That thing of when one door closes, you just keep going.
100%.
It's just that reminder that when I say, sometimes you have to knock on 100 doors and that one that opens is the one for you. So, yeah.
Definitely. I think I would hate to think how many jobs I applied for that numerous. And also how many conversations I had with recruiters who just told me, no, you're not, no agency, none of the big creative agencies are going to hire you because you don't have creative agency experience. And it just used to frustrate the hell out of me because I was like, I know that I can do, I know I can do this job. And actually, to credit to my ex-CEO at Clems, I remember that she, I remember saying to her when she kind of gave me this very large role, and I said, I've never made a TV ad, and she went, you'll be fine. She was like, if you can do all of these things, she was like, it's just a different format of advertising. She was like, if you can do the digital part, you can do the creative part. She was like, and obviously we'd had lots of conversations by that point, but I was really just at that point shocked to have somebody show faith in my capabilities as an individual rather than necessarily kind of the list of things that I had done.
Honestly, I think, and you just need, the fact that you've shouted her out is that she trusted in your capabilities and said that you can actually do the job. I think a lot of the time when you've been shut down in a way saying, oh, you don't have this, skill set, you've never done this before. And you start to internalize it and believe that probably you're not good enough and you're not the right person for a specific role. But if someone just lifts you up and said, I think actually you've got the skills, the transferable
Yeah.
skills to achieve this. You've got a team, you can lead, you can delegate, you understand the concept. That's sometimes it's just that one person to
Yeah.
lift you up and bring you into that. So that's
Yeah.
really interesting that you've always wanted to do
Yeah.
creative. It was
Yeah.
always in the backbone of one thing you wanted to achieve and
Yeah.
add to your career.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just, the amount, that's why I'm saying, did you have a vendetta folder? Because the amount of messages I wanted to send when I got the Saatchi and Saatchi role to all of the people that had told me that I was never even going to get, like an account manager role.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was definitely a really good pillar of success for me. Along with really, like, in all honesty, just happy team members that then want to follow me where I go. So, all the people that, when I left Clemenger who wanted to come and work with me at Saatchi's, or all the people, even people that work in Australia who, when I was at Adobe, were like, oh, I'd love to come and work for you again. Like, for me, that is a real, that's probably the other thing that I'm really proud of, is that I did it, I guess, with kind of holding my values true. And I'm sure everyone didn't love me, but like, at least I would hope that the majority of my team members enjoyed working for me and would want to work for me again. That's another really important thing for me.
I think that also resonates. I think you exude it as well. That there's something about your personality. I've only met you a few times, but
Yeah.
I think that also resonates. And then people do want to follow you, along on the journey. And that also helps for that team culture, which is so
Yeah.
important nowadays as well. There's a McKinsey report that was talking about, what's important, skills versus education, as people now move into understanding what Gen Z is going to be. And obviously education is important, but
Yeah.
skills and experience is sort of top on the list there. So like you said, building those transferable skills, those capabilities, which is learning by doing in whatever
Yeah.
job role that you've started. Being curious is a really big thing.
Yeah.
And developing it over time and building your team with you. Because
Yeah.
isn't that great?
Oh, it's
I've
the best.
loved so much, Georgia, over my career, the fact that I can literally say in every organization how many people I've, developed, and they've moved on to
Yeah.
do great things. That's what you want. You want them to spread their wings and fly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is the best feeling, like seeing people that you feel that you've hopefully helped in some small way, kind of do better and gain confidence. I think that's kind of what you were saying earlier, but like gain confidence in their own capabilities, and do well. It's the absolute best. But I think that of not just people that kind of have worked for me, but like of any of my female friends or colleagues, kind of, for me, seeing my friends do well, or women that I've worked with, is the best. And I was messaging a friend of mine yesterday, actually, and I was asking about her work and how it was going. And she's just doing amazing things. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm just in awe of you, like, and what you achieve. And she said, like, she thinks I'm the only person that said that, other woman that said that to her. And I thought, oh, that's really sad, that we're still not necessarily genuinely happy for other people when they have success.
Yeah, we definitely need to celebrate women as much as possible. I think, that's sort of the purpose of the podcast, is to shine a light and say, girl, you did that. We're really proud of what you've done. And yeah, I think we need to do more of that. That should be an aim, definitely moving forward. Let's talk about challenges. So what challenges have you faced? Because, it's not all rosy growing your career. And especially as a woman, I think, we need to just debunk the myth of everything that we're going through and maybe help shed light that there are going to be some challenges. So what challenges have you had? Let's talk about challenges. So what challenges have you faced? Because, it's not all rosy growing your career. And especially as a woman, I think, we need to just debunk the myth of everything that we're going through and maybe help shed light that there are going to be some challenges. So what challenges have you had?
Look, I think most women would say this, but I do think there are challenges that, particularly as kind of like a younger female. I think in some ways there's this like very small gap that you're expected to fit in. So you have to be kind of old enough that you're taken seriously, but not too old, because as soon as you're too old, of course, you're also written off. So there's this small kind of window in which a woman is kind of, I guess, taken seriously enough that they must be good at their job. And I would say, you know, like I remember early on in my career always lying about my age, because I felt so pressured that, well, you can't possibly have a 25-year-old head of marketing or whatever. That'd be insane. And I think that's definitely been a challenge. And I probably still think about that a little bit. And maybe that's just something that I'm overly concerned about because I faced it previously. But I'd say that's been a challenge. And I don't know if that's something you think about, but I do think there's this weird moment in time where females are kind of perfect for senior roles, and either side of it, they're slightly disregarded.
Honestly, you're speaking to someone who's gone through that as well. Where I thought, is that at a certain age that you then move into senior roles? Is there like this sweet spot where they think that you're ready? But, you know, we're seeing some people who've built businesses and they are CEOs of organizations and they're under 30. So I'm hoping it's changing over time, because we need to get over, you know, being ageist, being sexist, being, you know, all the isms that are out there that just stop us in our tracks. And organizations should just hire great women, no matter what age they are, no matter what they look like, no matter where they're from. Great women with great capabilities and to steer an organization, I think, should be important. But I feel you, because you think, oh, am I too young? Am I too old? Am I not the right, you know, is this the right time? And then when you have children, it's compounded as well.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's probably my other, that would have been the other challenge is, you know, it's one thing running at your career when you're not a mother. It's, and that's the challenge, right? You're permanently wondering who you're letting down. You know, am I being a bad mom? Am I being a bad employee? Am I being a bad boss? Just the balance of those things. And look, I definitely don't think I've got it perfect at all. And some days I'm feeling more on top of it than others. But I think learning to say no on both sides of the fence, and kind of understand to the best of my ability that I do look after myself enough to do both jobs. I think that was a challenge that I struggled. I think I've leaned too hard both ways up until now, and I think I'm in a good spot.
Let's talk about that. So how do you manage, you know, self-care, and what does work-life balance, what does it mean to you?
So I don't think, I'm definitely not the best. I'm definitely not the best at it. There are definitely people that I think have it more sorted than I am. And even my team at Adobe are always screaming at me to stop saying yes to things. But I do try and build in time for the gym, try and build in time to hang out with my son, and just be more I'm just being more flexible with myself. Like, I mean, if I have to catch up with work after hours, if I maybe don't have kind of a linear day, but that I make it work for myself, that's probably like my self-care, I think, is feeling that I'm on top enough of my day that I'm able to kind of spend time both on work, myself, and my son.
That's a very good one, saying the power of no. There is strength in saying no to things. I think that's where you create your own balance, and balance is defined as to how you want it to be. I think some people like 9 to 5, some people do 9 to 3, take a break, do things with their family, their kids, and then they're back on, 9 to 12 or 9 to 1 a.m. I think whatever works for you. Because it's all about living a fulfilling life, and fulfilling life is your career, is your family, is your friends, is your network. It's all together intertwined.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm definitely kind of that type of person. Like, if I don't have kind of meetings or whatever, I do stop a bit early. I really enjoy like some quality time with my son, and then I'm kind of very partial to picking it back up with a glass of wine, like 8:30 or whatever, and finishing off what I've got done. But yeah, I think it's important for me that I don't also beat myself up too much about how much I do care about work and how much I want to put into work. I think I also went through a time of being like feeling really bad about it, that I want to be at work, or that I have a long day and but I care and I want to be there. Also then not being kind of harsh on myself for caring that much about it. And I think, yeah, so look, I'm sure I'll have another week soon where I don't feel like I've got the balance, but for now I feel that being kind to myself is probably the number one thing that I'm working on. It's not necessarily about having a bath or whatever. It's just my internal dialogue, and having a kinder internal dialogue, no matter kind of the week, is probably the number one thing.
I love that message of being kind to yourself. That is a really good one. And it's a simple one,
Yeah.
easy, simple, and you take it one day, one task at a time. That's all we can do.
Yeah. It's not easy though, is it? We're so bad at it. I think that's a very female thing as well.
How important has networking been in your career? I know you talked about it at the beginning of the podcast about, networking and building that internal PR and external PR in terms of your network. How pivotal has that been for your career, networking?
Totally pivotal. Totally pivotal. I would not have my career, I don't think, without that. And it's mainly just about kind of timing and opportunity. Like, I really do think life is about timing. Like, you can be the perfect person for a role, or the perfect person for a project, but if the timings don't add up, or you didn't know about it, or whatever, you've got no help. And I think networking, having relationships, and therefore you're always one step ahead on timing. And you can make timings work for you. You have kind of maybe a knowledge of things that maybe someone else doesn't. Like, I think that's amazing. And then also just having people to fall back on to ask for advice. Like, the amount of times I've rung someone and gone, like, I'm doing this project, or I've got this meeting or this presentation coming up, would love to pick your brains on it. And to get somebody else's opinion that isn't necessarily in your team or in your kind of organization. That's been pivotal to me as well. Like, I've had just so many amazing people help me and guide me through decision making or kind of little things along the way. So yeah, I'd say it's 100% pivotal.
Just circling back to what you said about timing, I used to struggle with that. I think in terms of thinking everything was aligned, thinking I was right for the role, for the project, and meeting someone and thinking this is actually going to work, and actually it just wasn't the right time. And as you mature, you then, hindsight is an interesting thing. You then realize actually it wasn't the right moment for us to connect. And sometimes you connect with people in your network 5 years later, and actually that's the right moment to do something together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. That kind of because hindsight can be dangerous, I think, especially on a career perspective, because you're like, oh, like, should I have taken that role, or should I have stayed, or if only I jumped more of that opportunity or whatever. So, and again, that's the kind of being kind to yourself thing, right? That's the not beating yourself up part, because not that I'm a particularly spiritual person, but I do think you just, in some instances, if you've done everything you can, you just have to trust that the timing will be right, and that the right things will happen at the right moment.
Yeah, definitely. And also the letting go piece, like you said. So, once that moment has passed, that career opportunity that you could have taken, that woulda, coulda, shoulda, letting it go and moving forward as well, I think is really key.
Yeah, I mean, even like, for example, the leaving the Saatchi's role, like, for me, that was devastating, because I felt like I had, finally got this pinnacle role that really, and also there was a lot of ego in it for me, that, to the point, to the naysayers, I was like, I've done it. And then to so quickly kind of, just after a year, have to leave when there was so much more than I had to do. And to move to the UK and kind of find there wasn't maybe the equivalent, which was what in that moment of time I felt that I was looking for. That was really, I think, mentally challenging for me to go, okay, well, like, what next? But actually, I have learned so much at Adobe. And actually, I do think it was the right time. Weirdly, it felt like totally the wrong time, but it was the right time for me to take this role. And, I was always kind of the digital person in the creative agencies. And I mean, I was, but oh my gosh, I look back now and I'm like, wow, I don't think I even was. Like, my knowledge now compared to my knowledge then is infinite. And with, obviously the kind of acceleration of AI and where the industry is heading, how timely that I ended up at Adobe, who really are leading and at the forefront of AI. I'm like, wow, this thing that I felt was actually not necessarily kind of the perfect move for me actually has, in hindsight, been perfectly timed.
That's so interesting. I think sometimes we're also stuck on titles.
Yes.
Do you
Very.
know?
Yeah.
Stuck on titles. And in various organizations, I've met people who their title is just strategic lead, but they're managing a massive team
Yeah.
globally, and they are very senior within the organization,
Yeah.
presenting at boards, etc. And it took me a very long time to also say, actually, do you know, it's finding value in what you're doing in the
Yeah.
organization that you're in. So you've just talked about how at Adobe, there's
Yeah.
so much there to unpack, and
Yeah.
you're already in the AI revolution. It's moving really quickly, and you get to be part of,
Yeah.
things that are evolving in the
Yeah.
industry, which is fulfilling for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm so with you on the job title. I do think I think also, for women that have tried really hard to climb a ladder, it can be hard. I think a hard pill to swallow to be like, oh, but I want this amazing title, or I want this because I feel like but actually, the more you're kind of looking at what you're learning or what, what gives you value or joy in your role, and what's going to make you better for the next role, you start assessing things very differently.
That's true. And you also touched on one thing about asking, for advice. I think that I've learned as well, speaking to other women in different
Yeah.
careers, and just understanding how they may have had to have a sidestep in terms of the journey because of moving countries, or just things that happen in your life that, you have to then make a change as
Yeah.
well. And honestly, those nuggets of information that they've just
Oh,
shared, they also respect it as well. When you say,
yeah.
oh, actually, I'd like to have your advice on a few things, they feel honored as well,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. I have honestly, like the Adobe role, for example, I reckon I spoke to like 4 or 5 people. And I was like, what do you, because like I was a bit, emotional about the move, and I felt like I kind of, and I, at the time I had a kind of a couple of very different job kind of, not offers necessarily, but routes that I was kind of exploring. And I felt quite like, this is a bit of a pivotal moment. I only had a short time at Saatchi's. Like, what is the right route to go down? And it was just so amazing to have this collection of brilliant people to kind of give me really pragmatic and fantastic counsel on making those choices.
That's amazing. When you look back, Georgia,
Hmm.
we talked about, so if you were to say, spin back time, what kind of support should we, as senior leaders, or even
Hmm.
just organizations, do to better support women for their professional development
Yeah.
based on your own experiences?
I think the first thing is to be better at creating like emotionally safe environments. Like, I still think we have a fair way to, I think kind of on paper, a lot of the time we say that we have the right things and that we support women. And there's one thing having programs in place, and there's another thing creating emotionally safe environment. Like, you can't write that down. You can't document an emotionally safe environment. And I think that is where we need to move towards, because while people are afraid to ask questions or to kind of really say what is getting in the way or where they want to be or what's upsetting them or what they don't think they can do, you can't really help people. And I think that's something that I still witness all the time, is that we don't create the space for people to kind of be concerned or worried or confused. Like, you must know your next job, or you must know what your career path's going to be, or you must know the next job you want to take in this place, or whatever. Like, I think, so for me, that's the number one thing that I think leaders need to focus on, is kind of, how can I make my employees feel safe enough to raise things with me. And then I think the second part is a bigger focus on those, how we kind of assess the soft skills and how we assess the people's personality and, their credentials in that side of things, because I think we still actually have a very historic recruitment processes, I think. And I know actually quite a few great businesses are trying to change that. But I do think we have an old way of recruiting. And I think that gets in the way of women's progression a lot. So I'd love to see change in that area.
Yeah, it's thinking about not just a culture shift, but also understanding the needs and requirements for today's society itself, and how do you make it work. It's things like hybrid, remote, flexible working. What does that actually mean? How can we empower people? How can we upskill? Do we have the right tech to support that?
Yeah.
Those are things that weren't even thought about before.
Yeah,
And need to come to the
100%.
forefront.
Yeah. I mean, look, I am really thankful that I'm a working mother in this day and age. Like, I don't know how I would have done it in the days that you had to be in the office, 9 to 5 every day. Like, I am so thankful that I get to have more flexibility built into my days. So I do think, we should all be really thankful that most of us have a level of that. But there's, in my mind, still a long way to go, I think. And some businesses are better than others.
Yeah, definitely. One step at a time. I guess you can do it in your capacity, or I can.
Exactly.
Within the teams I am in, it's one step, one staff member at a time.
Trailblazers, right?
Yeah, girl, that's what we are. I've seen that you've now moved on to being a member of a board of trustees for First Light Trust for veterans. Tell us about your involvement and the significance of this for you.
I'm so excited about this. I mean, I feel probably most people, I think, have this. Like, you're kind of doing your day to day and you can really love what you're doing. But I hope it's not just me, that I permanently go a little bit like, does it matter? Like, am I doing something that actually matters? Like, obviously I care a lot about my job, but I do get caught up that I would love to do something, I guess, bigger than myself and bigger than potentially kind of selling technology or whatever brand it is that I'm supporting. So I've been looking to kind of get more involved for a while when this opportunity presented itself. And I know again, from a networking perspective, I know the CEO of this charity, and we just had a conversation because actually, even kind of the articulation you just gave of the charity of First Light Trust does not do it justice, and they need so much work. So it's not actually just a charity for veterans, it's any emergency services member. So anybody that has been in the police or the fire brigade or an NHS worker or a doctor, anybody that's effectively experienced trauma, working on behalf of the public, really, they do not have the right support. I think people expect people to come back from whatever kind of battlefield or even from a traumatic event kind of in our home yard and be okay. But actually, people can't witness horrible things day after day and be okay. And a lot of these people really fall through the gaps because to you and I, they might look like they're fine, but they're actually kind of a very high percentage of the homeless population. And with kind of lack of support comes all of the things that we as a society kind of try to prevent, right? So whether that's kind of domestic abuse, alcoholism, drugs, homelessness. And so for me, this is just a fantastic opportunity to be involved in a charity that's focused on prevention of something rather than necessarily cure something. Obviously, both are important, but to be involved in the prevention of just terrible scenarios for so many families, right? Not just the people, but families. And it just feels like something I could do. Like, I just think there's so much that, they don't have necessarily a lot of funding. They don't have marketing teams. And I, kind of jumped at the chance to start working with them and hopefully helping them to raise more funds. So that's really my role there. And I'm still in kind of the learning phase because it's 10 times more complicated than I had initially thought. And so I'm just kind of trying to learn how it all works at the moment, and then before I jump in and start rebranding the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's your first. Would you say it's your first board role?
It's my first board role, yeah.
Yeah, I was at a talk where Patrick Dunn talked about usually when you join a charity or an organization, you are wearing many hats.
Yeah.
And actually that's okay because you get stuck in, and then obviously the processes come in, and then at some point you're just advising.
Yes.
So that will come.
Yes. Yeah, I know. And that's the thing I'm going to have to really watch out for, as it is reminding myself that I'm a board member, not actually the entire marketing team, and do it. But it's really interesting, and I'm really enjoying learning more about not just being on a board, but obviously also the charity industry as well. So
Yeah, we'll definitely put it in the show notes. I think, it's good to create awareness for these organizations,
Yes,
and
please.
good for you. I think you think it's something to do with yourself and your own personal journey, looking for purpose,
Yeah.
outside of marketing.
Yeah, definitely. I just I think in terms of, as we talked about the value we derive from a role, right? Like I think there's different parts of someone's happiness that you get from different places. And I think for me, the kind of doing something that I really feel is helping people, and value is just a box that I guess wasn't really being ticked for me anywhere else in that kind of the things that make me happy as a person. So it's it's definitely not altruism. So but it is something that I'm really, really enjoying.
Let's talk about your core values and ethics. What are the things that mean the most to you?
I think the number one thing that means the most to me is that people are kind, like being kind. Like I think and compassionate, and trying always to see things from someone else's perspective, like even to the level that like I read a lot of books and I'm really interested in trauma and the effects of kind of like trauma on individuals and generational trauma on individuals. And so, you never really know what someone has gone through or why someone is the way that they are. Even people that I fundamentally might dislike or that I find really difficult to work with, I'm always at least trying to see things through a lens of, you don't know why this person is behaving this way. You don't know what's happened to them this morning. They might have had a horrible argument with their spouse, or, they might have just found out that a loved one's sick. And so for me, that is a really strong value of mine. And then the other one is always kind of care. And I mean care in everything. So I think my team would always say, like, I really care about doing the best that you can do in whatever you're doing. So if you're going to do a job, if you're going to do a small marketing event, if you're going to do a podcast, like if respect people's time, respect the money that you're spending, care enough to do a good job. Like that's kind of really all I ask of my team. Like I think if you care enough, then I know that you're always going to have done a good job. And like maybe it'll need tweaking and we'll work on it or we'll change it. But like I think that's a really strong thing for me, that everybody cares about what they're doing. And then I guess the other value for me is that we should enjoy it. Like I want to enjoy my day. I don't want the Sunday blues, and I've only had it a couple of times, like in jobs. It's just the worst. That's the worst. Like life's so short. Like, and it's okay to be anxious about something. Like kind of, I still get anxiety before a big presentation or whatever. But like the thought of being miserable going to work, or kind of spending the whole day before dreading something. Like I would just feel awful if anybody that we worked with or anybody in, felt that way. So that's something. I mean, it's sometimes hard. Sometimes we have to do really boring or stressful stuff in our jobs, but I don't want. I want it to be as enjoyable as it can be. And I think if you do those three things, then everything else is kind of okay.
I totally agree about that. That Sunday blues thing is, if you're, dreading going into work or starting the Monday, then there are some things that you reflect on and maybe change, because life is too short.
Yeah, it just is. And, it's good to love your work, but it is just work. So like having Sunday blues, all day is just, no, not for me. I'm sure you've had it. You would have had it at a few jobs, surely.
Yeah, definitely. And there's always that point of introspection where I then say, okay, why am I feeling this way? Why is this still happening? And what can I do to change? I've come to realize that there are things that are within my control, which I can change, and there are things that are outside of my control. And anxiety comes, stressing over the things that you can't change.
Yeah.
And sometimes tough decisions where I've said, okay, this isn't working for me. And moving on to something different, but it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And Sunday blues, I kind of always tell my team, if you start having Sunday blues, we need to talk.
Exactly. We need a chat.
We need a chat.
Yeah.
I'm not doing my job if you've got Sunday blues.
Yeah. Georgia, it feels like you have some really great foundations just from a personal, professional perspective. Who is your close circle that holds you together and has kept you going and keeping so, vivacious, full of energy and optimism and just in everything that you do?
Who is my close? Oh, I think I've got the best. I mean, I think the good thing, honestly, actually, about having moved countries and moved jobs, and careers a few times, is I just think I have an amazing circle of broad circle of friends, and I probably have different people that I go to
for different things.
But I know the people that I would need to call if I kind of need someone to have a stern word with me. Like if I feel like I'm spiraling about something, or like I have any feeling that I'm maybe not doing the right thing, like I know the people to call who will just give me a no BS kind of straight up answer and be like, Georgia, no, that's a bad idea.
Yeah. That ain't happening.
And then equally, I kind of know the friends that I need to call, like if I'm feeling like, ugh, or like I'm just having an off day, that are just going to kind of like lift me up and just give me the boost that I need. And then I'm really close to my mum. Like I speak to my mum at least every other day. And she's my number one cheerwoman, 100%. Like in my corner. I mean, she probably maybe too much thinks that the sun shines out of my, but like, she absolutely is in my corner. And, if I'm mad about something, she's mad about it. I
love that.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, she's mad with me. So that, and then, I am definitely lucky enough to have a husband that's also really supportive with my son and like looking after, picking him up, never giving me, making me feel bad that I've not been around to maybe do the pickups and things. And I think that is really important to have a home environment that you come back to, that you're not feeling like, oh my gosh, have I balanced things right today, or have I done it, have I made the wrong decisions throughout the day to balance my life? So coming home and knowing that I've got a kind of really supportive system, and also a huge mama's boy of a 4-year-old, that's the best.
I love it. They say, look at the 5 close people in your life, whether it's professionally or personally, and that will tell you a lot about the direction your life is going. So it feels like everything's all good your side.
I think you gotta have good friends. You gotta have good friends. Like you gotta have good friends, and you gotta have good female friends, because look, my husband's lovely, but blokes are rubbish. Like they're going to give you a practical answer for everything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like my mum's there hating with me. Like if I'm mad about a situation, she's
I totally agree with you.
Agree with you, whereas my husband's trying to give me a very practical solution to the problem. And he's like, well, what you should do? And I'm like, no, I don't want it. Don't give me a solution. Just be mad with me. So you got to have females.
Yeah. I always find, because I am the oldest of 8, so I've got 8 brothers and sisters.
8?
And yeah.
Oh,
and before I used
5. You got your crew.
Yeah. I used to take on the role of solutionist a lot when they were growing up. Yeah. And at some point I said, I need to take on the role of just active listening, just listening and saying, yeah, I'm okay with whatever. I'm mad at that person as well. Yeah, I'm on your side.
Yeah.
Whatever decision you're making, I'm with you. I think that's been a shift, but also for me, for my own sanity, I think that's been good as well. Sometimes you just need to just be with them in the trenches while they're going through what they're going through and let them persevere and come out the other end.
100%. I'm agreeing with you as well for myself, like kind of the active listening part is, I think, something everyone needs to work on. But yeah, it's not easy.
Georgia, amazing. Let's summarize Trailblazer takeaway tips. What nuggets are you living for our audience?
All right. Well, so I think, as we've established, network. Don't say no. Say yes. Like, it's kind of awkward, I feel like, to ask other adults for like coffees or drinks, or be like, hey, can I take you and kind of pick your brains on whatever? But honestly, most people, to your point, are flattered to be asked. And I think, don't presume that people's answer would be no, kind of. So I think that would be my number one thing. Just ask. Definitely ask. My second one is my second one's a bit of a work one at the moment. If you're in marketing and you're not kind of all over AI, in terms of that kind of wanting to be a scientist, wanting to be curious, wanting to learn, like, I think now is a time more than ever where, it kind of feels like all over again. Back when I was like first kind of being curious around social media, and it really was the basis of my career. And I feel like we're in this, to your point, we're in this time again. So now is the time to be uber curious. And then the third one, I think, is the last one we just spoke about. I would say making sure you have a close circle of friends and people that can help you, guide you through kind of those key moments, the people that are going to give you rational decision making, the people that are going to cheerlead you, and the people that are going to tell you, hell's no, don't do that.
I love it. I was going to say fourth one is be kind to yourself.
Oh, the fourth one is be kind to yourself always. But I'm still learning that. So if anyone has more tips, let me know.
I know. Yeah, the worst fire to be fighting is the one in your mind, and inner peace and being kind is so important.
Yeah, that's a good saying. Is that I need that on like a
on a t-shirt.
T-shirt on my fridge every time I go to it.
Georgia Scott, this has been amazing. Delving into your career, your background, your personality. I think you're an amazing young woman. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
And I think you've shared really some great tips that would definitely help someone out there, no matter what they're going through. And to your point about, AI is that new technology that we should be all trying to learn and investing in, and just being curious, I think is really important. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. This has been so fun. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you.
This has been the Trailblazers Experience Podcast. Tell another woman about the podcast, and remember to do the usual: share, like, subscribe. We are on all streaming platforms, and see you soon. Thank you.